What's up everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be giving you my full card predictions and betting breakdown for UFC Fight Night Gaziev versus Rozenstruik. Last week I went 9-3, this week we're sweeping the card. Let's start out with the first fight of the card, which is Loik Radzhabov versus Abdul Karim Al-Selwady. In this matchup I'm taking Al-Selwady. I actually got him at plus money, around plus 145 when this first dropped. He is now the favorite. I knew that he would be the favorite by the time this fight was closing, just because of his last win over George Hardwick. And that's not the main reason why I am picking him, but I will tell you that a lot of people are high on him simply because of that performance. George Hardwick was everyone's favorite prospect coming off of the Dana White's Contender Series, and then he lost to Abdul Karim Al-Selwady. Selwady was like a 5-1 underdog, something crazy like that. But what he does do very well is he's very well-rounded. He's a pretty solid striker. Maybe not the greatest technically, but he pushes an insane pace. His cardio is very, very good. On the feet, he might not be the most technical. He can get hit with some big shots, as he has been knocked out 3 times, all in the first round. Like I said, he's hittable. But he does wing some very powerful shots that you really have to respect. If you don't respect them, you're going to get caught and you can get knocked out. He has some power in the hands, maybe not the greatest power in the world, but he's got some thud there that you really do have to look out for. He'll shoot takedowns as well. That's what I like about Abdul Razak Al-Hassan in this matchup, is I have seen him work in the grappling on other opponents. He's comfortable in the grappling. I know Loik Radzhabov does have some good wrestling, and that's probably how he'll win this fight if he doesn't clip Abdul with the big shot. Loik has some good power, and I'll get to that in just one second. But I think that from what I've seen on the regional scene, Abdul Karim Al-Selwady has shown some solid takedown defense. Just takedowns in general, which is going to lead me to believe that he is a pretty solid grappler. He's shown a pretty well-rounded game, very good cardio, throwing full power shots 100% of the time, not gassing out whatsoever. I love guys that can push a pace. I like the fact that he works in takedowns with his striking that is already threatening, and he's got some very solid low kicks. And when I look at Loik Radzhabov in his performance against Mateusz Ronbecki, he did not do too well with the low kicks. Mateusz Ronbecki was a very similar frame to Abdul. Very stocky guys, ripping the low kicks with a grappling threat, and they like the pressure and they'll push an insane pace. Those are 4 things that just lead me to believe that this could be a very similar fight, minus, the punching power and the smishing game from Mateusz Ronbecki. So in this matchup, I'm picking Abdul Karim Al-Selwady by decision. But I fully recognize that Loik Radzhabov has very good power. He's got some decent takedowns, right? But I do believe that he's not fantastic at holding people down. Against Esteban Ribovic, I think he took him down like 11 times. Now that's good. Obviously, he can get him down to the ground, but that also tells you that Esteban Ribovic got back up to the feet multiple times in every single round, and Loik Radzhabov wasn't great at holding him down. Abdul Selwady has shown some good scrambles. He's a pretty calm fighter, but overall, I just think his pace, his leg kicks, his pressure, and his ability to mix it up with the takedown threat will bring problems to Loik Radzhabov. So I'm going Abdul Karim Al-Selwady. I'll say 30-27. One of the rounds is pretty close, so maybe a judge gives it a 29-28. Don't feel super high on him here, but I had to take him at plus money. He is now the favorite. I feel pretty good about that. So yeah, Abdul Karim Al-Selwady is the pick. Moving on to the next fight of the card, which is Ludovic Klein versus AJ Cunningham. I'm taking Ludovic Klein here. AJ Cunningham, to me, when I watched him on the Dana White's Contender Series, did not look that good against Stephen Nguyen. He's tough, but he's also extremely hittable. And Stephen Nguyen actually knocked him out in the second round. AJ Cunningham is fairly durable, but he'll get hit clean, and Ludovic Klein is a very solid striker. He's actually very technical. He maintains range very well. I see him landing some big shots. I could see him finding a knockout or just winning this by a very dominant decision. AJ Cunningham, to me, isn't UFC caliber. He lost on the Contender Series, like I mentioned, to Steve Nguyen, or maybe it's Steven Nguyen. Either way, I don't think that fighter that he fought in the Contender Series is very high level, man. I don't think Stephen Nguyen is the guy that you should be getting knocked out by in the second round and then expecting yourself to turn around and beat Ludovic Klein on short notice. This is a matchup I can't advise you to bet on AJ Cunningham, but there is a chance that he can somehow just run into a takedown because he'll be pressuring nonstop. He does push an insane pace, and he can make this an extremely fun fight. But if he finds takedowns, maybe he finds a submission, maybe somehow he pressures and makes it a scrappy fight and could come out on top, but I doubt that's going to be the case. Ludovic is a very good striker who can make this a very technical matchup. And we haven't seen too much power from Ludovic Klein, and he hasn't knocked out a lot of opponents recently, but I do think that he could find a big shot here. So Ludovic Klein is the pick here. KO or decision, we'll see. AJ Cunningham isn't that good, but you never know sometimes. I just don't think AJ Cunningham is UFC caliber, so I'm pretty confident in Ludovic Klein. At minus 800, I'm not going to touch it, but you guys do you. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. Christian Leroy Duncan, I'm going to be calling him CLD because I'll mess up his name a lot, versus Claudio Ribeiro in this matchup. I'm taking CLD, but I'm not very confident. Claudio Ribeiro hits extremely hard. He's got a grappling threat. He's a very, very strong guy, and he's got a good submission game as well. I just think that CLD on the feet, despite being an absolute autist, and what I mean by that, the dude just throws spinning wheel kicks in pocket range. I'm exaggerating, but he'll throw 5 to 10 spinning wheel kicks per round, 3 to 4 axe kicks, throwing head kicks. I mean, his head kick, his teep kick, the front kick, all those are his jabs. He doesn't throw his hands that often, and he does, and it has some power at times, but he just seems to do everything outside of the fundamentals, which really pisses me off and really makes me nervous in this matchup. He keeps his hands very low, which tells me his striking defense probably isn't the most reliable. As we saw, Armen Petrosian was able to beat him, and Armen Petrosian is a guy I actually do believe in as a striker. Now, obviously, he just got taken down and submitted by Rodolfo Vieira, but in a striking matchup, I believe that he is a pretty solid striker, as he beat Gregory Rodriguez in a decision where he was getting taken down at times. My point being, losing Armen Petrosian isn't the end of the world. I think Armen Petrosian would beat Claudio Ribeiro, but CLD here worries me because he gets hit. Petrosian obviously was connecting with him, and Claudio Ribeiro will just go for it. If CLD's sitting there with his hands down low and he's throwing some weird spinning crap and he's just out of range or he's too close to Claudio Ribeiro can just come over the top and land a big shot. I really don't mind the underdog pick here, but I got to trust the range of CLD. Although his range management is always an issue for me, there are times where he maintains range very well with his teeps to the body. He's very unorthodox, but he's also very powerful and very explosive. He's tried to work in grappling in his most recent performance against Denis Tululin, which tells me he's a little bit comfortable there. We'll see if Claudio can get some grappling going. I don't see that being the case, but it's definitely very possible. I am going to factor into that CLD is young and improving. I mean, same thing with Claudio Ribeiro, I believe, as well. But I trust the range and the power of CLD. I said trust. I don't trust, but I'm relying on it, and I'm going to pick him by round 2 KO. This should be a fun fight. I could see it boring somehow if CLD thinks he's a grappler again, or if Claudio Ribeiro just takes him down and wrestle flux him to decision. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we'll get a pretty fun scrap here. Claudio is typically in fun scraps. And another reason why I am picking CLD is because Claudio is coming off a knockout loss, but not only that, he was getting touched up by the kicks of Roman Kopylov, who I think is a better, more fundamental kicker than CLD, but CLD will probably have success with those kicks as well. Kicks to the body, nice head kicks. We've seen just Claudio struggle with kicks before, so CLD will be the pick. Low confidence. I don't mind you playing Claudio Ribeiro by finish. That's not a bad prop at all to play. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Javid Basharat versus Ayman Zahabi. I think it's Ayman. Anyways, Basharat is the pick very confidently. He is better everywhere. He is the better striker, much more technical. He is the better grappler, has a better submission game, has better takedown entries, and has the better cardio. The only thing Ayman Zahabi really has in this matchup is his power threat. And he can obviously land a big shot, but Basharat has taken some decent shots. He hasn't shown a granite chin, but it's hard to catch the guy clean anyways. And I think he will shoot takedowns, and I think he could potentially find a submission, win this by decision. I'm very confident in him here. And the money line odds would reflect it as well. Obviously, with how inflated it is, he's around minus 700. I wouldn't advise you to take that, but if you're just going for a parlay where you want some value, why not, right? I mean, I think Ayman Zahabi's probably not going to win this one, but with his power, maybe he can get something done. Related to Firas Zahabi, so do with that what you want. I'm just telling you right now, I don't think it's smart to parlay a minus 700 favorite, but Javid's good, Ayman's not. It's a confident pick. He probably lands takedowns early, beats him on the feet. It is what it is, man. Basharat bros are actually pretty good, right? I know they get some hate because they're boring, and some people say they're frauds because they don't submit or finish anybody, but ultimately they're very methodical. They got high fight IQ, and I really do believe in him in this matchup. I'd be pretty shocked if he lost, but I mean, that's kind of the story for a lot of this card. A lot of the favorites are massively inflated, so it's kind of hard to find who you like here. With that being said, let's move on to the next part of the card, which is Vinicius Oliveira versus Bernardo Sopai. Vinicius Oliveira is a fun striker to watch. This guy is so much fun to watch. I can't stress that enough. Great power in the hands. Now he wings shots a little bit wide. He's a little bit loopy with it, but his hands are still very quick. He's got some very solid low kicks. He's got a very nice head kick. That knockout on the Dana White's Contender Series was insane, but at the same time, it was a little bit of a sloppy performance because he's going out there winging, looping wild shots. And he can get caught clean, especially by straight punches. That is his kryptonite. Multiple times on the regional scene. Once against Ali Taleb. I want to say that's the guy's name. I'm pretty damn sure it was. He got clipped with that straight punch. It was there multiple times throughout that fight. And then in the third round, he was going in for a straight right. He looped it a little bit wide, and Ali Taleb just looked for the straight right up the middle, dropped him, ended up knocking him out off of that punch, and that is actually Bernardo Sopai's best strike. In his most recent performance, Bernardo knocked out a guy with the perfect counter straight right. Now I'm going to tell you that although he has the perfect skill set to beat Vinicius Oliveira, I'm not going to be picking him here. And it's for the reasons of, number one, he's taking it on short notice. I know he has a full training camp basically because he would have been fighting next weekend anyways. The same date as UFC 299, just to give a reference for you guys. So he's going to be in fight shape, but he's not going to be fully prepared, and I believe that Vinicius Oliveira has that type of style that will make it harder for someone taking it on short notice. From the get-go, as soon as that cage door locks, as soon as that bell rings, Vinicius Oliveira is going to go for his head. He's going to make it a high-paced fight that's not going to allow Bernardo Sopai to really think. And I think Bernardo Sopai is a technical striker to some degree. Obviously, he has good power, and he can knock Vinicius Oliveira's head off at any moment. And if he does, I'm telling you, it probably will be with the straight right down the middle. One of his straight punches. He's got good straight punching. Outside of that, I don't want him to stick to the looping punches here. I think he's going to get caught if he does, right? Vinicius Oliveira is obviously much more rangy here. But when it comes down to it, I think Bernardo Sopai at times has been a little bit gun-shy. And I think when he's going to be fighting a guy like Vinicius Oliveira, who's going to go out there pushing an insane pace from the get-go, it's going to be hard for me to see him finding that big shot early. Now, as the fight gets later, I could really see him finding a lot of success. He is very durable. On the regional scene, he hasn't fought the greatest opponents. I think the best opponent he has faced is a guy named Francesco Nuzzi, and that guy is now at PFL Europe, and the guy has been on a tear. The guy hasn't lost outside of once very early in his career, but he is one of the top guys in PFL Europe in the bantamweight division, so that's not a bad loss on his career. Granted, that was also 3 years ago, so not too big of a loss, especially considering Bernardo Sopai is 23 years old, so he's going to be improving rapidly, which is why I'm really considering him here. But at times he's gun shy, and what Francesco Nuzzi, whatever the frick his name is, what he did well and had success with in that matchup was his low kicks and his head kicks. I think that made Bernardo Sopai a little bit hesitant. His corner was telling him to get going. You got to bring the pressure to him a little bit. And sure, he shot takedowns, and we have seen against Vinicius Oliveira, there was a guy he fought that was Kazakhstani, and his name had Ulu in it. That guy also fought Beksat and actually submitted Beksat, and we'll get to that later. But Vinicius, what do I want to say there? Stuffed the takedowns, and sure, he looked good. He was beating him. Takedown defense looked good. His scrambles looked good, but he was gassing out. So maybe Bernardo Sopai shoots takedowns and gasses out Vinicius early, because that's how you're going to gas out a guy like Vinicius, honestly. But when it comes down to it, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to be a little bit caught off guard by how fast Vinicius comes at him. This is not an easy fight to take on short notice. It's a very threatening fight. And just to tell you who this guy was taking on, if it wasn't Vinicius Oliveira, it was going to be a 6-5 guy, and that's for the title of whatever organization he was fighting at. And that just tells you he's probably not fighting in the greatest organizations, whereas Vinicius Oliveira, with the record of 19-3, has been fighting at UAE Warriors, which is a promotion that I actually do believe in some extent. They have some very solid prospects, some very good records over there. Vinicius has beaten some very solid fighters, and the guy he did lose to most recently was Ali Taleb, and he was having a lot of success against him until he wasn't. And that's what I'm nervous about in this matchup. As Bernardo, I've been saying Bernardo, I think, the whole time. As Bernardo is very durable. And if he just survives the early onslaught, Vinicius gasses himself out, that could be a massive problem. But when I watch Vinicius versus Ali Taleb, despite the fact that he got knocked out in round 3, it wasn't because he gassed. It's because he got a little bit overconfident, was swinging too much in the pocket, was really pushing for that knockout, and then got caught. When he's gassed out in the past, there's been a lot of grappling exchanges. And Bernardo, dude, it's a rough one, man. Bernardo Sopai has been a guy that has shot takedowns in the past, has had success on the ground. He has a good grappling game. He is friends with Khamzat. I don't know if he trains with him. I was just watching his fight in his most recent performance where I saw Khamzat in the background. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He's Swedish, so that's cool. He trains in Sweden, so fuck yeah. I mean, Vinicius Oliveira's last loss was to a Swedish guy, so maybe he's out for revenge, or maybe he's going to get cooked again, and Swedish fighters are just his kryptonite. We'll see. I just think Vinicius Oliveira, with that head kick and his low kick, which are very good and very quick weapons, are going to bring Bernardo Sopai some problems. And I feel like Bernardo Sopai is a guy that does like to think, does like to process in his fights, and will be passive if someone is really pushing the pressure early. And I think with how wild Vinicius Oliveira is and how just quickly he throws his striking combinations, it's going to make Bernardo a little bit cautious early. He can find a big shot at any moment, and I'll tell you this much, if Vinicius wins the first 2 rounds, he's probably going to be a massive favorite. But as it heads into round 3, I'm going to be looking at those live odds, and I'll be throwing a little bit of something on Bernardo. And I don't mind the play of doing Bernardo. I think Vinicius can actually win this by decision. I'm going to be honest, because I think Bernardo is that durable that he can make it to a decision. But when it comes down to it, I think Vinicius can either find the knockout or the finish. I'm low confidence on this one. I've expressed my reasons for why. There's clearly a more durable guy. There's clearly a guy who has a path to victory. I mean, both guys do. But, I mean, if you want to bet on the durable guy who's got great straight punches, which has been proven time and time again, you just want to watch a tape. Vinicius has been caught with them so many times throughout his career. He's got great power. I just think he's a shorter guy on short notice fighting a freaking wild guy. It's not going to be something that I want to bet on. I'm actually fairly excited for this fight. This is one of the more interesting fights on this card just because of how competitive it is. And I think both these guys are good prospects. They're both young, and they're both a lot of fun to watch. So let's see what happens. Vinicius Oliveira is the pick. I'll say a KO or decision, honestly. I really don't mind a decision. That's what put me over the edge when I kind of saw him against Ali Taleb in round 3. After pushing an insane pace for the first 2 rounds, looking fine, looking rejuvenated. It's just, if there's a heavy grappling approach here from Bernardo, he probably gasses out Vinicius and he probably wins this fight. I don't see him doing that, but we could see something different. I do want to mention, too, Vinicius Oliveira has very solid takedown defense and very solid scrambles. That's all I want to say for this fight. Let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Eric Anders versus Jamie Pickett. Both these guys were people I did not know were in the UFC until I started looking at this card. I'm like, holy shit, neither of them are cut. Jamie Pickett is off a 4-fight losing streak, and Eric Anders has lost a lot of fights throughout his career. Recently lost to Marc-Andre Barriault. That's not a bad loss. He actually won one of those rounds. And Marc-Andre Barriault just had a close fight with Chris Curtis. Now, personally, I think Chris Curtis isn't as good as some people think he is, but Chris Curtis is still a ranked opponent. He is still a placeholder in the middleweight division. Marc-Andre Barriault is still a pretty solid fighter outside of the rankings, and Anders had a pretty close fight there with Marc-Andre Barriault, so that's telling you something. Now, I'm going to keep this breakdown pretty short and simple. I think Anders should be the better striker. He's the more rangy guy. He's got the more finishing potential. He's minus 425, which for me is crazy considering he is one of the lower level guys in this division. You just can't trust low-level fighters with a minus 425 money line. He should get it done. I'm fairly confident that I am picking the right guy here, but you never know with these low-level guys. Jamie Pickett isn't the worst striker in the world. He has some takedown defense. This should be a striking fight. This actually should be fairly fun, but who knows? Maybe this is a very boring, sloppy decision because sometimes when you just get these really low-level fighters, it's just destined to be a shit show. But Eric Anders is going to be the pick. I could see a KO. I could see a decision. I don't mind the play here, but I imagine it's very inflated for inside the distance decision, no action on the side of Eric Anders. But like I said, it's probably inflated. It's probably like minus 300, minus 400. If it's like minus 150, I don't mind that. I don't think Jamie Pickett will find a finish here. Anything's possible. You never really know. But Jamie Pickett, not the greatest power. He gets hit. Eric Anders probably finds big shots, outpoints him to a decision, or finds a knockout. I think I've already said that. So let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Matt Schnell versus Steve Erceg. I'm going with Steve Erceg. Matt Schnell isn't the greatest striker. He gets hit a lot. And when it comes to his grappling, sure, he's got some good submissions, and sure, he's been seen as durable in the past, but he's coming off a knockout loss to Mateusz Nicolau, where Mateusz Nicolau was landing great shots all over the place, hurt him multiple times, and then finished him. That's telling me that he's not as durable as a lot of people thought he was. It was more of just Sumaderji making mistakes. And not only that, maybe his chin is not as good as it once was. Now, I don't think that's going to be a massive worry for me here, because Steve Erceg is not Mr. Power Man himself. Steve Erceg has pillow hands, and he's decent with the striking. He's actually pretty good. I'll say this much. He's pretty good at range. He's got a good jab. He's got a good straight right, and he's got a good low kick. That's basically all you see from Steve Erceg that's really good. What I don't like is when he trades in the pocket with fighters. That's when he can get clipped. But when he's gotten clipped in the past against Alessandro Costa, he responds pretty well, finds takedowns. He's pretty good with his scrambles. Overall, a pretty well-rounded guy. Nothing really great about him. He's not super physically imposing, but he's well-rounded enough to where I trust him to beat Matt Schnell, technical enough where he'll slow it down. He should be beating Matt Schnell here. Sure, Matt Schnell can find a submission. Maybe he has success on the feet, makes it a scrappy fight, and somehow finds a big shot, and then latches up a submission. Maybe finds a TKO. I don't see that being the case. Steve Erceg can take a pretty decent shot. He can work in takedowns. Like I said, well-rounded, good scrambles, good cardio. I don't think he's that great. But Matt Schnell, I really don't think is that good either, and is one of the lower-level top 10 ranked fighters in any division whatsoever. But, I mean, the flyweight division doesn't have the deepest roster yet, so maybe that's a little bit harsh. Anyway, Steve Erceg is the pick. Pretty confident, once again, in another inflated favorite money line. I wouldn't play it. I'm going to say that for every single one of these, but they're going to be the pick. They're going to be the pick. They're the most logical pick. Speaking of an inflated favorite and another guy that you have to pick, let's move on to the next fight of the card, which is Umar Nurmagomedov versus Bekzat Almakhan. I'm picking Umar Nurmagomedov. He's like minus 1,000. I don't think that's the right odds, but at the same time, I'm confident Umar wins this fight. On the feet, he's a tough stylistic matchup for Bekzat. I know Bekzat has power, and he's a good boxer, and in close range, he can land a big shot, potentially hurt Umar, and Bekzat has used grappling to his advantage in the past, but when it comes down to it, Bekzat is not a very rangy guy. Umar is super big and super rangy for this division. He's got great kicks, and I think it's going to be a problem for him, for Bekzat. He's got good teeps to the body. He's got a good head kick. He's got very good question mark kicks. Does he have an axe kick? I don't know. He's got some dope kicks, good low kicks, good body kicks. And I think for a guy like Bekzat, who isn't the most rangy guy, who is more of a boxer, it's going to give him problems closing the distance. Not only that, it's not like Umar has bad hands. He's got a good jab, got a good straight right, very technical striker. Maybe not the most power, so maybe Bekzat just absolutely disregards a power coming his way from Umar Nurmagomedov and just goes out there looking for a knockout. And that's probably how he wins if he gets it done. I don't see him winning a decision. Maybe he stuffs the takedowns, but I do think that Umar will be able to stuff the takedowns, or excuse me, he'll be able to land the takedowns that he needs, potentially finding a submission, potentially winning this by decision. I think he's the better striker. I think he's the better grappler, the better wrestler, and the better jiu-jitsu guy here. I can see a submission. We have seen Bekzat Almakhan, or Almakhan, I might be saying that wrong, get taken down and submitted by another Kazakhstan guy on the regional scene, which I brought up earlier when breaking down Vinicius Oliveira's fight against Bernardo. Vinicius Oliveira actually did beat that same Kazakhstan guy. The guy has Ulu in his name, U-U-L-U. I don't know how to say that. I don't remember the guy's full name. There's no way I'm going to. But when it comes down to it, that guy took down Bekzat and was able to submit him, which is already not the greatest sign here. I think Umar can probably find a submission, maybe a decision. I'm not relying on a KO, as Umar has really gotten one KO throughout his career. I guess two, one like very, very long ago. I was checking the Tapology records. But in the UFC, he's gotten one knockout win. And that was against Tony Barcelos. And that was a great combination. I think that's a new meta for combinations if you don't have power. It's where you throw that knee and then you just throw that uppercut or just a straight right behind it and land it. I mean, Rozenstruik, who's never flatlined a guy before, just flatlined Beneil Dariush. Granted, Beneil Dariush doesn't have the greatest chin, but he got flatlined. Umar Nurmagomedov, a guy that wasn't landing many shots to knock guys out, really hurt him, flatlines Tony Barcelos, who has taken some good shots in the past. I mean, heck, Tony Barcelos just took some good shots from Christian Quiones last weekend. So it's interesting. I don't think Umar has pillow hands, but I don't think he really sits down on shots all that much either. So maybe that had something to do with it. Another example of that knee combination is Rafael Fiziev, a guy who doesn't have devastating knockout power, knocked out RDA, a good guy with a good chin, after showing that knee and then come over the top with the left hook. Anyways, that's enough talking about that damn combination. When it comes down to this fight, I think Umar's better everywhere, and that's why I'm picking him here. But Bekzat, I mean, he has the tools to be threatening to anyone, so minus 100 is not a money line I would bet, but if you're just wanting to put someone in your parlay for fun, why not, right? Moving on to the next fight of the card, we got Alex Perez versus Muhammad Mokaev. I'm taking Muhammad Mokaev pretty damn confidently, but Alex Perez has the tools to make this a close fight, as a lot of Muhammad Mokaev fights are for whatever reason. Against Tim Elliott, two judges had Tim Elliott up 2-0, actually. Yeah, going into the third round, which means if that fight went to a decision, Tim Elliott was winning that fight. Now, I disagree with that. I think Tim Elliott lost round two. Muhammad Mokaev had a moment where he slammed Tim Elliott down on his head. Tim Elliott literally said that he went out cold. So for me, that was enough to think, all right, Muhammad Mokaev won round two. He had a lot of control time. Sure, Tim Elliott had a submission attempt, but that was what it was. He ended up submitting him in round three. Now, there's a meme around the MMA community that Muhammad Mokaev has a great submission game in round three. He's just the round three warrior, and it's true. He seems to clutch up every time in round three. Whenever it's close, round three is his most dominant round. Against Malcolm Gordon, against Jafel Filaho, against Tim Elliott. All fights that were fairly close. Now, I know some of those opponents aren't very good, and that is worrying, but he clutched up at the end, and I do think he's a young guy. You have to bet on him rapidly improving. Alex Perez has been taken down multiple times, been submitted in his last two fights. Now it was against Figgy, and it was against Pantoja, two very, very solid fighters, some of the best in the entire division. Well, Figgy's obviously at bantamweight now, but Figgy was the champ. Figgy was fucking good as hell, man. So there's no shame in those two losses, but he's been inactive. It's been a long time since he has won. And although he has some good striking, he has a wrestling background, so maybe that's what you would like here. And maybe he is the better striker here, but I think that Muhammad Mokaev will really work towards the takedowns. He's got such good cardio. He's going to smother him with takedowns. Even if Perez keeps getting back up to the feet, he's going to get taken down over and over and over again. Mokaev has very good control time as well. And I'm seeing a round 3 submission. I mean, Alex Perez has pulled out a lot of times. Maybe he has a rough time making weight. I don't know why he pulls out so much. He gets injured a lot. He can't make weight sometimes. He's ill. So maybe this is one of those scenarios where he's having a rough weight cut because it's been such a long time. And then his cardio isn't the same. I don't think he's going to be able to hold up with Mokaev's nonstop cardio. He's going to get back up to the feet. So I can see Mokaev decision. Or I'm just going to go with the patented round 3 submission here. That's my pick. Round 3 submission, Mokaev. I'm pretty confident in him here. Minus 360. I mean, it's fair, but I mean, I wouldn't really advise anyone to really just throw money on a minus 360 money line. I parlayed him at minus 240 a little bit earlier in the week with someone on UFC 299. I'll get to that next week, but he's a pretty good fighter. Obviously, I think he wins this fight, and I think they're going to look to book him against Pantoja at UFC 301. I actually do believe that because, number one, we have seen the UFC favor some of these Dagestani, Ev fighters for quite some time. I think if he wins this fight and he submits or finishes Alex Perez, does it in dominant fashion, they probably give him a title shot at UFC 301. Because who else would it be? They don't want to give it to Royval. Albazi pulled out of the fight against Moreno because he was injured, so he might not even be ready. Who knows, man? I think he probably gets a title shot with the finish here. Let's move on to the co-main event, which is Vitor Petrino versus Tyson Pedro. I'm going with Vitor Petrino. I'm not as confident as a lot of people are. I feel like a lot of people are saying Vitor Petrino is the next greatest prospect of the light heavyweight division, and I don't mind that idea. He's young, he's powerful, he's shown a good submission game, he is strong, he can land takedowns, but to me, he's not that good yet. He's not extremely technical. Now I trust him here. I am a little bit nervous as Tyson Pedro has good knockout power, can land clean, and Vitor Petrino is not exactly the most technical striker ever. Now he can land a big shot and knock out his opponent or hurt them, whatever it might be. Recently, he beat Modestas Bukauskas. I want to say he submitted him in the second round. I could be completely off. Maybe it was a knockout. Double checking that right now. I watched that damn fight, but I swear I get fights mixed up all the time. Round 2 KO. That's right. I think I picked that perfectly. Round 2 KO. Anyways, you can go back and rewatch that. I do full court predictions every single weekend, just like this. With that being said, Vitor Petrino has good power. In round 1 against Modestas Bukauskas, what I didn't like about that, when it comes to this Tyson Pedro matchup, is he was kind of cautious. He was a little bit gun shy, not letting his hands go, and I was expecting him to let his hands go and land the bigger shots on Modestas Bukauskas in round 1 and potentially hurting him. As Modestas Bukauskas doesn't have the greatest chin, and he is arguably the more technical striker of the two. Obviously, right now, that doesn't look like the case because Modestas got knocked out, but that's just how Vitor Petrino is. I'm not saying I think Vitor Petrino is bad, by the way. Let me clarify. I'll clarify by the end of this breakdown, but he's got good power. He's got a good chin. I don't think he needs to be as technical as some of the best light heavyweights, and I think it's going to take a technical striker to beat him. But in the light heavyweight division, there aren't many technical strikers that can beat him. And even if so, like, I'm thinking of a Dustin Jacoby. Dustin Jacoby gets hit with big shots all the time, right? Like, that's probably like the lowest level technical striker I can see beating him. But to this point in his career, he hasn't beaten anybody good. His most recent performance was against Modestas Bukauskas, who sucks. Now, Modestas Bukauskas actually beat Tyson Pedro. So that alone, with MMA math, tells you Vitor Petrino is going to win this matchup. But Tyson Pedro is going to bring it to Vitor Petrino in round 1, and Petrino gets hit. Maybe Pedro has that power to really hurt Petrino. Now, I've seen Petrino eat good shots in the past, but I've also seen him make a lot of mistakes on the ground too. So Petrino is going to... Wow, man, I can't talk. Petrino is going to be the pick. He can work in takedowns. He's got a grappling threat on top of the massive power threat he has, and he's not the worst striker in the world. He makes his striking work. He lands shots. I'm not trying to hate on him too much. I'm just saying against a technical striker, I am worried. Tyson Pedro is not this technical striker, but Tyson Pedro in round 1 has a great chance against anybody. Now, Tyson Pedro's got like a round of cardio before he fades, before he starts to slow down, before he starts to gas, and that's why he ends up losing to Modestas Bukauskas. And that's why sometimes when he's fighting these bums, you have to consider picking the bums. He's coming off the win against Anton Turkalj, who was knocked out in the first round. I picked Anton against Tyson Pedro. Yes, I'm guilty. I know Anton, the pleasure man, sucks. But Anton Turkalj makes it to decision with Vitor Petrino, but then gets knocked out in the first round against Tyson Pedro. That's what confused me. That's why I picked Anton. But with that being said, I think Vitor has shown improvements throughout his game. He's going to work in takedowns. And I think he's tough enough to survive round 1, if not knock out Tyson Pedro in round 1, who is very hittable. I think Vitor will land a big shot. Tyson might rock him a little bit back, but then he'll find takedowns. and then just kind of chill out. If he fights at that low pace that he fought in round 1 against Modestas Bukauskas, though, I could see Tyson Pedro having around 2 rounds of cardio, which is something I don't really like. I don't mind this being a super high-paced fight. I want him to get the grappling going early, and then in rounds 2, 3, do whatever you want with him. Just for a whole round, respect Tyson Pedro. That's my only advice towards Vitor Petrino. I'm rooting for Vitor. I think he's fun to watch. I think he's got a good submission game. But, like, he has lapses against Anton Turkalj. And I'll move on from this fight pretty soon. But against Anton Turkalj, he's in, like, full mount. He's got the back of Anton, and he slips off. And all of a sudden, Anton Turkalj is in the exact same position. And then Anton fucks up. It was just it was a funny-ass fight to watch. But these guys, they keep making mistakes. Vitor makes mistakes on the ground. He makes mistakes on the feet. But he's fine because he's so physically dominant, so physically imposing, so powerful, so dangerous on the ground. He's well-rounded to a certain degree. I don't think he's the most technical guy everywhere or anywhere. I don't think he's extremely skilled yet, but he's only going to improve massively. He's 26 years old, a physical specimen, probably on roids, but he's extremely strong. I like that on my side as well. Tyson Pedro's probably got a round 1 KO chance outside of that, which is a good chance. I do think it's very solid. But I'm going to say Tyson Pedro. No, not Tyson Pedro. I'm going to say Vitor Petrino, round 2 submission. I'm going to say 60% chance of winning. But beware, he gets hit, and Tyson Pedro has power and is live in round 1. Let's move on to the next fight of the card. The main event, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Shamil Gaziev. Shamil Gaziev is interesting. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know how I feel about him. He has power on the feet, but maybe not the same type of power that some of these other heavyweights have. Like a Derek Lewis, like a Jairzinho, like a Ngannou. Obviously not. He landed like 60 straight punches consecutively on the face of Martin Buday and couldn't flatline the guy. Martin Buday got standing TKO'd. Sure, he was rocked, but you get what I'm saying. If there's anyone that hits harder in this matchup, it's Jairzinho. And I'm not going to tell you that Shamil Gaziev is a great striker just because he beat the brakes off of Martin Buday, who sure was 4-0, but I thought should have been 3-1, should have lost to Lucas Bursky, and outside of that, really didn't look like a great striker. I picked Shamil against Martin Buday as an underdog. I had a lot of money on him, and I cashed. Now I'm going to sit here and tell you, I'm picking Jairzinho Rozenstruik in this matchup, and just hear me out. I know Shamil has good grappling, and I know Jairzinho just got submitted by Jailton Almeida. I'm aware of it. I've done my research, and I'm willing to take the shot on Jairzinho. I'm not very confident, but I have my reasoning. First, I want to break down Shamil and kind of his fighting style. On the feet, he's not that technical, guys. He's got good power, and sure, he's the more rangy guy, and he's extremely strong. I'm not taking that away from him. He's got good grappling. He looks Dagestani. I think he is Dagestani. He's from Bahrain. That's cool, a new country that we haven't seen in the UFC. I don't know if ever, but it's not a super common country. He's got good grappling. He's got a good submission game. On the feet, he's got decent power, right? It's not one of those bottom feeder heavyweights. I'm not saying he's that bad. I'm just saying when it comes down to it, against these guys in the rankings, there's certain guys I trust to beat him or I would pick to beat him, and Jairzinho is one of those guys because I can't trust in Shamil's takedown entries. Sometimes they just look too slow, and I'm going back on the regional scene watching bums stuff his takedown entries. They're having success there. Not only that, there was a guy who dropped Shamil who is literally like maybe 6 foot, probably under 6 foot, probably like 5'10". It was a super stocky dude. I want to say he was like Serbian. I think he was Serbian. His name was like Dusko Stocic. There's no way I got that right. I couldn't remember the fucker's name. But you go back, the guy ended up getting knocked out in the first round, I believe. It was by an uppercut and clean from Shamil. But my point is, that guy is not Jairzinho. Jairzinho is a very solid kickboxer who has like 80 wins in kickboxing, 90 wins in kickboxing, something crazy like that. Obviously devastating power. And that Serbian guy who has slow hands on the feet, was able to stuff takedowns from Shamil and land an overhand right, I think, or left, that knocked down Shamil Gaziev. And Shamil was pressuring in. My point is, Jairzinho Rozenstruik is actually a pretty good counter striker, and that overhand right is one of his best strikes. That's where we have seen Shamil Gaziev get hit in the past. We have seen Shamil Gaziev get hurt, so it's not like he has the crazy chin. Plus, this is the heavyweight division. You can't rely on chins here. On the feet, I know who the better striker is. It's Jairzinho Rozenstruik. It just is. Now, is Shamil going to shoot takedowns? Probably. I think Jairzinho will be able to stuff him, but I also think there's a very good chance Shamil's just looking for the knockout in the first round, looking for his big performance, and he gets slept. Or even so, maybe he goes out there, has a very good performance in round 1, spamming 1s and 2s. That's all he does. He throws a flying knee too from occasionally time to time, but it's not knocking out anybody. I doubt it's going to be flatline Jairzinho. Sure, Jairzinho has been knocked out in the past, but it's been against more powerful, athletic dudes. On the feet, I just don't see much variety for him. Jairzinho has seen a lot on the feet. I don't think he's getting sparked early. I don't. Maybe he gets TKO'd somehow, but in the pocket, Jairzinho is the better striker. At range, I mean, sure, he's going to be the better guy. I'm talking about Shamil. Shamil is going to have the more success early. That jab, that straight right is going to bring him a lot of success early, but eventually Jairzinho is going to find a way to find a counter, to find a big shot, and he's going to flatline, if not knock out Shamil. I think Shamil is slow. He's not comparable to the other Dagestani Russian guys. I'm not a Dagestani hater. I'm one of those guys that actually does appreciate them. I'm not trying to be suck up. I'm just saying Islam, Umar, some of these other guys on the come up, they put on fun fights. They have a lot of finishes. Not only that, you know it's high level, which is something I do appreciate. You know, the Sambo guys get a lot of hate because some of them do have some very boring decisions. I'm not a hater of them. I actually do enjoy a large majority of their fights. Like I just mentioned, Shamil is not in the same group as them. I got to be honest with you guys. He just isn't. Sure, he's got some decent takedown entries, but they're so slow. Now I want to talk about the counter-grappling of Jairzinho. I think this is a very massively underrated trait of his game. He's only been submitted once in his career. That was by Jailton Almeida. Now against Alistair Overeem, against Curtis Blades, and against, there's one other fighter that shot takedowns, that he stuffed takedowns from, that was fairly impressive. I'm not going to remember it. Sorry, guys. It is what it is. I'll probably remember it somewhere. But he's stuffing takedowns. Against Jailton Almeida, too, in round one, he stuffed a takedown, and it looked fine. Very solid takedown defense. In like the first 5 seconds. Got back to range, and then Jailton Almeida throws an overhand left, and then immediately ducks down into a takedown. Probably the quickest takedown entry you will see in the heavyweight division. Quicker than Tom Aspinall's. That's what's good about Jailton Almeida. Very quick takedown entries. That's where his massive claim to fame is here at the heavyweight division. It's just being quick. And he's also extremely strong. He's probably juiced to the gills. So he takes on Curtis Blades next week, and that's going to be an interesting matchup. But he stuffed a takedown there. He has a decent reaction time, and I'm not going to fault him too much for getting taken down by Jailton Almeida. Now I know Almeida couldn't submit Derek Lewis in his most recent performance, but that's just because Derek Lewis is just autistic and didn't mind being in full mount and just holding the hands of Jailton Almeida for 5 rounds. That was one of the most bizarre fights I've ever seen. Whereas Biggie Boy, maybe this is not a good sign, but he realized the threat that Jailton Almeida had on top of him and gave up his back. Now maybe that's the same thing here with Shamil Gaziev, but I'm looking at Shamil Gaziev in half guard on top of Martin Bidet doing jack shit, trying to land a couple of shots, not doing anything, just coasting on top of him. And I'm watching Shamil Gaziev gas out. That's another main reason why I trust Jairzinho in this matchup, why I am picking the dog here. It's because Shamil, up until that point where he was separated against Martin Bidet because Martin Bidet had that eye bleed, whatever the hell it was, that stopped it for quite some time. Martin Bidet, I want to say, was hurt, sure, and that could have like negatively impacted Shamil. But if you look at Shamil, his pace was slowing down. Some of the thud off his shots, it was coming down a little bit. He wasn't hitting as hard as he once was. You could tell he was gassing, slowing down a little bit. And we have seen on the regional scene, there was a fighter he went to a split decision with where he was gassing out late. And I'm telling you right now, we have seen Jairzinho Rozenstruik go 5 rounds. Not a high pace. He's not Murad Dvalishvili, but he's been 5 rounds. He can pace himself, and that's why he has gotten the name Rozenstruik. It's because sometimes he doesn't throw strikes. But I guarantee you, Rozenstruik is going to be seeing Shamil Gaziev gas out, and he's going to be letting his hands go, and he's going to land a big shot. And even if it is a striking matchup in the pocket where they're just going wild, Jairzinho will land the bigger shots. I do fully believe that. Now, if it's early, Shamil has the best chance of having the most success on the feet. I think Shamil, in his own mind, might just want to get this done early on the feet. He might want a grand performance, but I could also see him looking for the takedowns. And if that's the case, that gives him a much bigger chance to win this fight. It's just, from the get-go, I can't even trust that he'll do that because he has entertained the striking against a lot of guys. If he shoots early, I think he gets it stuff. Not only against Jailton Almeida. I'll cycle back through this. There was multiple moments against Curtis Blades where he stuffed takedowns. Sure, Curtis took him down 3 times, but there was like 3, maybe 4 takedowns where Jairzinho stuffed him. He has troubles with trips, and if Gaziev has success with his takedown entries, it's probably going to be with the trips. When it comes to stuffing double legs, outside of that Jairzinho, outside of the Jailton Almeida takedown landed on Jairzinho, Jairzinho is pretty good at sprawling, pretty good at stuffing double legs. And yeah, I mean, it just comes down to the trips where he's so top heavy that almost every single trip shot on him succeeds. I just think that when he stuffs takedowns, he's very good at separating from the clinch, exploding out, getting back out to range. He's not going to chill in the clinch with Gaziev, allowing Gaziev to find these trips. I think he knows what Gaziev does, and I think he knows that Gaziev's going to gas. I think he trusts his own cardio as well. Rozenstruik and his ability to just slow down, not his ability, but his will to just not throw might actually benefit him here. And it makes me trust him in the later rounds, but also in the early rounds, like I said, if it gets wild, I trust him. He's the kickboxer. He's the more technical striker. The leg kicks will be there. I mean, he's even got a decent head kick. He hits hard because he's been hurt by lower power punchers. Like on the regional scene, there are moments where a lot of low-level fighters are stuffing Gaziev's takedowns. I don't think his entries are that good. Another fight where you can look at takedown entries where Jairzinho stuffed takedowns was against Alistair Overeem. Alistair Overeem, 1 year prior to that fight, took down Sergey Pavlovich and knocked him out or TKO'd him on the ground in the first round. Jairzinho survived for 5 rounds. In round 5, comes back, lands that big knockout shot, right? Stuffs like 8 takedowns against Ciryl Gane. Say what you want about Ciryl Gane's grappling. Ciryl Gane is a guy that is actually extremely athletic for this division, and that alone would be enough to land takedowns on guys. Ciryl landed 2 takedowns on him, yes, but Ciryl Gane also failed 10 takedowns on him, which already tells you something. Like, Ciryl is super athletic. I can't tell you guys enough. I'm basically mainly picking Jairzinho just based off of the theory that the heavyweight division is absolute dog shit until you reach the rankings, and even then, some of these lower ranked ranking guys are absolute shit. And I think that's just truth. Martin Bidet is horrible. I mean, look at some of these other guys at the bottom of the rankings. Like, who's that guy that's fighting Tai Tuivasa soon? He's not good. Marcin Tybur, that's not a good fighter. Alexander Romanov, I mean, dude, gasses out after 1 round. There's so many fighters at the bottom of the heavyweight rankings where I'm just like, dude, how are these ranked fighters? Not only that, outside of the ranking, it's the biggest joke, some of the lowest level sports professional athletes you'll ever see. And that's who Shamil Gaziev is beating in the first round. I mean, congratulations, but you're going to run into adversity here if you can't find that takedown. And I have seen Jairzinho Rozenstruik stuff takedowns from other high-level grapplers, and not only that, survive on the ground. Gaziev can even get the takedowns, and we could see Jairzinho survive. And then at some point, it will be on the feet. At the start of every round, it is on the feet. That's where we can see Jairzinho stuff takedowns and knock out Gaziev. There were moments in the Almeida versus Lewis fight where Almeida seemed to slightly be gassing out, where if Derek Lewis just stuffed one of those takedowns, the fight will be on the feet, and Derek Lewis might end up finding that knockout. That could be the case here. Gaziev has worse cardio than Jailton Almeida, and he has worse takedown entries. It's just the facts. And I think Jairzinho's takedown defense is being massively underrated. His counter-striking can really bring him success here. His power can bring him success. Gaziev's striking defense sucks. This is just a pick that I'm feeling. I feel like I went into detail on this. Jeez, this is a fucking heavyweight main event. That's not even in the top 5. So, anyways, I think Jairzinho finds a knockout probably the first couple of rounds, but as the fight goes later, it massively benefits him, in my opinion. It just does. I think it does. Now, Gaziev can find a knockout or a submission in the first round, maybe in the second round early as well, but if that's not the case, I think Biggie Boy wins it. That's straight up. So, yeah, that's how we just swept the entire card. I mean, maybe that just fucking aged horribly, but if there's a card I'm going to sweep, it's probably going to be this one. You got massive favorites on every single fucking fight, it feels like, outside of this one and the Vinicius Oliveira fight and the opening fight. So there's like 3 fights that like genuinely made me actually think about who I was going to pick. Outside of that, I felt pretty confident with where I was going to end up picking my fights. So yeah, that's that. I mean, let me know if you guys disagree with anything. I could see why you would want to pick Shamil. I could see why you want to pick some of the other fighters on the card as well. But yeah, pretty straightforward card. That being said, if you made it this far, it wasn't that bad of a video. Make sure to like and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.